I think this situation absolutely requires a really futile and stupid gesture be done on somebody's part. We're just the guys to do it.
Fun has just begun.
All right. Yes, it has. We are back, That Nerd Show. We have a lot to talk about today, and the fun has just begun, except if you had to sit for 2.5 hours through Batman versus Superman. And we're going to get to that a little bit later, because we have a lot to talk about. And this will be your complaint center for Batman versus Superman. But before we get started, I'm Marcus Blake, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, is Brendan.
What's up, nerds?
And Chloe James will be joining us a little bit later for the second half of the show, since she did our full review for Batman versus Superman. And like I said, we all have a lot of thoughts about it, but you're going to have to stick with us until the second half of the show, or come back later, because we have a lot of news, things that we need to discuss, a few reviews, and a very interesting This Week's Sign of the Apocalypse. And believe it or not, it has nothing to do with the Batman versus Superman. But we'll get to all that a little bit later. So before we get started with everything else, I think it's time we do a little bit of news and tell you what's going on in the nerd universe. All right. Despite all of the critics' complaints and everything you might have read on the internet, believe it or not, Batman vs. Superman is making lots of money. It was reported today that they are about $424 million worldwide is what they have made this weekend, and they did cross the $170 million barrier here in the U.S. So, you know, in terms of money value, it is a successful film. That doesn't mean it's a good film, but it is a successful film, and I guess that does.
The Transformers movies were all successful. That doesn't mean shit.
No. And you know, we over the years we've learned to, you know, look at movies as not just by their value. You know, how much money do they make? Because Twilight was a very successful franchise, but it was god-awful and definitely needs to be torn apart as a movie franchise. Except for 12-year-old girls. That's a good audience for it. But, yeah, there you have it, regardless of anything. And you know what? I think part of it is despite critics, people aren't going to be swayed by it. They're curious about this film. We've been waiting for a Batman versus Superman for a long time. And Man of Steel was, you know, whether you thought it was great or not, it was a fun film and a nice reboot for the, you know, Superman universe. So I'm not surprised. But what I'm curious about is, you know, what will it be next weekend and the weekend after that? So will it actually make $1 billion worldwide? I don't know. And we shall see. Okay. So besides that, some interesting things are happening. Voltron fans, we've talked about that Netflix would be redoing a Voltron series for their streaming service, and we actually got the very first trailer this week and a release date. June 10th, you will get to see 13 brand new episodes of Voltron, and it's not going to depart too much from the original series. I mean, it is a reboot, so you are going to go back to the beginning and introduce everybody. And it does actually look, you know, very good. The old series, if you watch it now, is a little dated, and that's okay. But anyway, this series is called Voltron, Legendary Defender. And it just their description of it, from days long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes to Netflix the original series, Voltron Legendary Defender. And it is, in this series, 5 unsuspecting teenagers transported from Earth into the middle of a sprawling intergalactic war become pilots for 5 robotic lions in the battle to protect the universe from evil. Only through the true power of teamwork can they unite to form the mighty warrior known as Voltron Legendary Defender. And that's for some of you out there that are young enough not to remember the original Voltron and how great it really was and ahead of its time, along with things like Robotech.
And just remember, Power Rangers are a ripoff of Voltron, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Important safety tip, because if you say that around anybody over the age of 30, you might get slapped hard with a shovel.
And if you've been listening to us long... Oh, go ahead.
Well, then what I really liked about the trailer, I mean, it's only a teaser. You get to see that the things come together, and that's about it. But what I really liked about it, though, is they kept the Japanese style of animation, even though it's DreamWorks, it's an American studio. So it has a very authentic look to it. So I'm pretty hopeful for it going forward.
Yeah, and you know what's great about this is you do get to introduce a whole new generation to Voltron with the same style of animation and stuff. So for those of you that are over 30 and have kids, and you want to share some of the same cartoons that you grew up with, just like, Brendan and I got to, sharing the Looney Tunes with our parents' generation, Voltron is, it's great that you're coming back because it's a good thing for this new generation. I'm very much looking forward to introducing my nephew to it. But yeah, if you've listened to our show over the years, you've noticed that we don't actually cover Power Rangers, and the reason being is it is a cheesy ripoff of Voltron, and we prefer the source material over the ripoffs that you have. So, yeah, we will be talking more about Voltron and not Power Rangers. We're probably going to make fun of the Power Rangers movie they're making. I think that's going to go in our category of a movie that's being made for Mystery Science Theater 3000. So,
pretty much.
Yeah. But anyway, June 10th, everybody. And if you're over 30 and you don't have kids, there's still no shame in being able to watch Voltron on Netflix, because we're going to do it. All right. So Marvel's Most Wanted, which is the spinoff show of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., starring Adrian Palacki. They've added a couple more people. Oded Fehr and Fernando Andrade, if I'm pronouncing that. So you've got a little bit more casting, with that. And for those of you that may or may... Go ahead.
Honestly, I think this show's a mistake.
I don't have an opinion of it one way or another because I don't keep up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Personally. We have other staff for that. But I've watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from the beginning. I gave up on it for a while until the Winter Soldier. It took the Winter Soldier for it to gain any type of traction. I just don't think there's enough there for a spinoff. And I as much as I like the character of Mockingbird, I really don't see her anchoring a show. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Well, if for those of you that don't know about it, this is the brief description. Bobby Morse, a.k.a. Mockingbird, and Lance Hunter are two ex-spies and ex-spouses who are on the run with no friends, no shield, and a long list of enemies looking to claim a bounty on their heads. Able to trust no one but each other, Bobby and Hunter form an uneasy alliance with Dominic Fortune, a rogue adventurer with a wealth of resources, and even more adversaries who agree to protect them as long as they help with their own agenda. While on a dangerous mission, they take them to every corner of the globe that these two heroes will help anyone in need, all while trying to uncover the conspiracy that put their own lives in jeopardy. So it's not a new storyline. We've seen similar storylines like this before.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds an awful lot like the A-Team.
Thank you.
They're going to have a black band, and they go, da-da-da. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Are they going to have someone with a lot of gold around their neck saying, I pity the fool?
Yeah, where's B.A. Baracus?
Right.
Hey, I'm over getting Murdoch back on TV, but, does that make Mockingbird face?
Jeez. The only way that I think...
Could we just recast her with Starbucks so that we can have her doing another Dirk Benedict role?
Nice. Well, the only way that I see this show kind of working is don't do 20 episodes, knock it down to 10 or 13. You might be able to cram a lot of good stuff within a short amount. time without having to stretch things and make it so boring. So, but yes, I mean, really, what this is the A team for, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'm sure they'll pop in and out of that universe again. So, and I like Adrienne Palacki. I mean, she's been good in a lot of things. So, I mean, it's good that she has, a series, but will it last? That's the main thing. So, Anyway. All right, so quick, if you're wondering some of the things that we watched that has been renewed for CBS, Supergirl is not on that list yet, but it is expected to be renewed. Pretty much all the NCIS, shows have been renewed, but Elementary and Blue Bloods are definitely coming back, and Scorpion. So that was announced this week. So there you go. You get more seasons of that. And, Elementary is one of those that I think they're just trying to get the 5th season so they can syndicate it or do enough with it, I guess. It still doesn't beat Sherlock, but, there you go. Okay, a little bit more nerd news. For all you Linda Carter fans, is the original Wonder Woman. She will be in the 2nd season of Supergirl. It still has not been announced who she will be playing, but yes, Linda Carter returns to the DC universe. So there you go. And I think she's popped in and out of stuff before. I want to say that she was on a few episodes of Smallville, like Margot Kidder.
Yeah. I think so.
And I'll say this about Linda Carter. She may be in her 60s, but she still looks good.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway. All right. It was only a matter of time before this biopic came out. I'm surprised there hasn't been a story yet, but I'm very curious about this movie, and this is the reason that we're announcing it. There's a movie called The Founder, Big Macs, Big Lies. It's about how McDonald's got started, with Michael Keaton playing Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's. Anyway, it's likened to both David Fincher's The Social Network and Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. It will tell the story of how a salesman named Ray Kroc teamed with two brothers, Richard and Maurice McDonald, to launch what would become an international fast food chain that now serves 68 million customers every day. Laura Dern is in it, and she will portray Kroc's long-suffering and neglected first wife, Ethel, who he divorced in 1961. You'll have Patrick Wilson, Linda Cardellini, Nick Offerman, John Carroll Lynch, and B.J. Novak in the movie as well. So it does have a good cast, and I think that what they're trying to do is trying to get a little dark tone and go behind the curtain, so to speak, with how McDonald's, really got started. And it's kind of weird.
That's where the term "crock of shit" came from.
Well, you definitely know. I wouldn't be surprised if it came from somebody from sitting on a toilet after eating McDonald's. But,
yeah, it's only to be outdone by Taco Bell.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
But yeah,
two restaurants that should totally market for children up to people with the age of 25. Anybody with after that age, their bodies can't really handle the food. So
I get mad at people in my office who come back from lunch and go, "Oh, I don't feel good." Why? Well, I ate Taco Bell. Why on God's green earth would you do that?
Yeah.
You know it sucks, and we live in Texas. There are better Tex-Mex options on every corner.
Right. Anyway, Michael Keaton has done some good stuff over the last few years. Was remarkable in Spotlight, so I think this is a good casting for him. And like I said, I mean, McDonald's is it's part of our culture. We've all grown up with it, and I'm very interested to see, how dark they really get with this movie. My only question is, are they going to be sued, or there's going to be more controversy surrounding this movie, like Morgan Spurlock's Super Size Me that came out like 10, 12 years ago? So anyway, all right. Just in case you needed reminding, if for those of you that don't watch Supergirl, tomorrow's episode is a good reason to at least watch one episode. It will be the crossover between The Flash and Supergirl. So The Flash from the WB will be visiting Supergirl in tomorrow's episode. So that one I'll check out. I haven't personally watched Supergirl at all this season. Again, we have staff for that, and it didn't keep my interest compared to other shows. But I like that they're doing a crossover. So, anyway, also, Last Man on Earth with Will Forte it got confirmed this week. It will be back for a season 3. If we haven't really given much coverage to this show, but if you haven't seen some of the episodes, it is an absolute hilarious show about the last man on Earth, or he thinks he's the last man, and starts encountering people, and you really find out that he's just kind of a horrible person. So it's a neat little show for Fox, and it's working for their network. So. For you Last Man on Earth fans, it will be back for a season 3. And Rob Zombie fans out there, I know there's a lot of them. And while I could care less for his music, he has made some very good horror films out there. The Devil's Rejects is a good horror film, if that's your genre. Anyway, his new horror thriller 31 was acquired by Saban Films. So it's about carnival workers who fight evil clowns. So it may not sound enticing, but this is Rob Zombie. His movies are.
It sounds like a redneck Supernatural.
Yeah, which I'd be fine with. So he will be coming out with a new movie, and. This is actually some really big news, and we can't wait to see this episode. But Darth Maul will be returning to Star Wars. He will be on the season finale of Star Wars Rebels Season 2. So this, which is happening on Wednesday. Oh my God, there's a lot of stuff happening in this finale. I mean, you're finally going to get to see Ahsoka face off against Darth Vader. Darth Maul's returning. I mean, holy crap.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that next season, and I'm really grateful that it got a full 22 episode run this year instead of the 15 it got in the first season. But
right,
I'm really hopeful that next year we get to see a Vader fight Maul. That would be pretty awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, what they have done with this show is kind of leading up to the rebellion and who all these other characters are. I mean, the Star Wars TV show that we were promised years ago by George Lucas, which never came to be, I mean, it sounded exciting and stuff, but I don't know how well it would have been received. But they have done an incredible job with Star Wars Rebels, just like they did with the Clone Wars. So, it gives us more history into, that universe that helps set up movies. Very interesting characters, and I like the fact that you have stories about the Jedis who didn't die with Order 66.
Right.
I'm waiting for Wednesday. I can't. I mean, my whole favorite part about the entire series is the fact that you get to meet Ahsoka, and she has become a regular with the show, but you knew it was coming, that she's going to have to face off against Vader. So my only hope is that she doesn't actually die, because I don't want to see her storyline end, But we will find out.
It kind of sounds like it has to, though, so we'll see.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that with the new trilogy, I'd like to see like an older version, Luke find Ahsoka, that type of thing. But I also
that's the thing. If they still had Ahsoka around at the time of the movies, don't you think she would have helped train Luke? So,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, I think that her storyline really does have to end before anything, happens. And, for Luke to be the last of the Jedi to go off, and especially and find new Jedi, have his tragedy, find another Jedi, whether it be his daughter, I understand from a storytelling point that really should be the time that ends, okay? But I'm just saying, I like the character. I mean, it would be kind of cool, but...
Yeah, I hear you.
But oh well. My only hope is don't die in this episode. You may die in Rebels, but let's at least get one more season out of you. So, all right, some interesting casting news as well. Paul McCartney will apparently be in Pirates of the Caribbean 5.
Because we need to get just one more aging rocker into that series for some reason.
I guess. His part is, and the other thing is they basically wrote in his part. It wasn't even a part of the original script. I think it was just, hey, let's put this guy in. Yay!
It reminds me of the Simpsons musical episode where they're like, and for no reason, here's a poop.
Pretty much. All right. And more news. Elijah Wood will be joining the Dirk Gently series. And if you don't know anything about this, it's a upcoming BBC America series. It's a comedic thriller that follows the bizarre adventures of eccentric, holistic detective Dick Gently and his reluctant assistant Todd. Now, this was also originally written by Douglas Adams, who did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So already you know it's going to be good. And Max Landis is scripting the series. So, but anyway, it's about these two detectives as they wind their way through one big, seemingly insane mystery a season, crossing unlikely paths with a bevy of wild and sometimes dangerous character. Each episode landing them from random steps, or a few random steps closer to uncovering the truth. So there you go. I've never read the book personally, but I am a huge fan of Douglas Adams, and like I said, that right there, I think shows promise about how good this series can be. So,
yeah, we'll see. You never know.
Well, the other thing, too, is you're going to get 8 60-minute episodes instead of like 13 or whatever. So you're going to get a lot of good stuff in a short time frame and all that. All right. We had reported that that Amazon had picked up the new Tick series, Amazon Studios. Well, they thought in that Patrick Warburton would not be returning as the Tick, but they did find who is going to be the Tick. Peter Serafinovich. It's a name that it's hard to pronounce, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, we all know Marcus. Pronouncing names is not Marcus's strong suit.
Well, especially when I've been drinking. So we started early on this show. But look how many things. I mean, it's a weird like Czech name or whatever. Good God Almighty. But anyway, he has popped up here and there and things, and you'll recognize who he is. But he will be playing the Tick, and he is a very funny, British actor. So we're still going to check out the new Tick series, but we all know it'll never be quite the same because Patrick Warburton is not the Tick. So anyway. And for those of you that are keeping up with Legends of Tomorrow, it was announced this week that Ra's al Ghul will be returning in Legends of Tomorrow. Basically, it's an episode that will be aired this Thursday, and it's Ray, Sarah, and Kendra are shocked after they watched the Wave Rider fly off without them, leaving them stranded in the 1950s. Months for their teammates to come back, the three realize they may have to move on with their lives. Ray, Kendra bond as a couple, but Sarah decides not to return to the League of Assassins, and Ra's al Ghul guest star Mark Nabel before he died. So anyway, you're going to get to see Ra's al Ghul in the League of Assassins, so to speak, in the 1950s. So there you have it. That'll be kind of an interesting little twist with Sarah going back to 50 years to the League of Assassins and dealing with all of that. And speaking of Legends of Tomorrow, I mean, we will do a full season review once it's done. But that has been an interesting show. It's not my favorite. I think it's good filler, and I like the cast. I don't think it has quite topped Arrow or The Flash, and I don't think it's meant to. I think it's meant to give you something good on a different night.
I also think that they really miscast the guy who plays Vandal Savage. I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me. He's not. I really didn't care for him. I didn't really care for Matt Nable as Ra's al Ghul either. I just think they're kind of missing the boat on some of their villains. I think they need to cast them better.
Well, the problem with doing anybody for Ra's al Ghul is after we've had Liam Neeson do it, it's kind of hard to cast anybody. And knowing that Liam Neeson was up for reprising that role, and they didn't give it to him, it's kind of like anybody's is going to put a bad taste in your mouth. And I'm not saying that Matt Nable is the greatest. I don't have that much of a problem with him. But like I said, that other thought about Liam Neeson reprising a role in the back of your mind, I think it makes you look at Matt Nable a little bit differently.
Well, I don't know, because I didn't hear that rumor until after I first saw him play. But so I just.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they've done a very good job casting all of their villains. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, some of them are great. Obviously. Malcolm Merlyn, they did a great job getting John Barrowman. They did a great job with Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, getting Manu Bennett. But some of them, Harrison Wells was a great villain, but some of them they just missed the mark. So we'll see how it goes.
Right, I see. I understand. But anyway, he will be in there and stuff. Okay. For those of you that are fans of Bloodline, Bloodline Season 2 is coming back May 27th. That was a Netflix original series. The first season premiered last year with Kyle Chandler and Ben Mendelsohn. One of our favorites, Glenn Morshower, was in it, playing a bad guy, which was very different. But it was a very, very, very good series. And it will be back here shortly in the next month or so. So there you go. And for all of you Doctor Who fans out there, and I'm very, very perturbed by this, but apparently Doctor Who is no longer on Netflix. And I didn't really realize this until I actually clicked over and I was going to watch some Doctor Who one day, and it wasn't there. Not even the classic Doctor Who. But it will be, looks like Amazon Prime paid a lot of money to get it, and it will be premiering on Amazon Prime, well, today. So there you go. If you're a Prime customer, you'll get to do that. If you're not, well, you'll have to resort to other means. But
I'm a Prime customer, so.
You mean you'll be able to keep up with Doctor Who now? Okay. All right. And for a little bit of comic book news, Justice League number 50, the writers Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok dropped a big bomb when they announced this past week that that comic book readers will get to learn the Joker's true name in the latest episode, which I found that interesting because, come to think of it, does anybody actually know the Joker's real name?
Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been different versions of it, but
right.
Honestly, that's kind of stuff. I'm not really. That doesn't get me all that excited. Ooh, we get to learn his true name. Okay,
right.
Great. It's probably going to be a disappointment because it's been built up for so long, and
right.
Everybody has their ideas. Stuff like that. It's like when you get to stuff like this, like revealing things that have been a mystery for so long. It's almost best if you just leave them a mystery. And I think
right.
the best example of that is the one good decision Lucas has made over the years with Star Wars and not revealing what Yoda's species is and what their history is. It's just
right.
Yoda's species. You don't get anything about them. You don't know where they're from. It's just a mystery. There are only a couple of them known throughout Star Wars canon. And really only two of them are canon now because Star Wars: The Old Republic isn't canon, and then the comic that the fourth one was in isn't canon. So the only two are Yoda and Yaddle, and Yaddle dies in the Clone Wars. So it just it's better just to leave some things a mystery, and I don't know. We'll see.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that is the latest big thing from comic book news, and we wanted to let our fans know about it. I partially agree with you, but to kind of have another storyline, which they're always creating new storylines in comic books. I think it's an interesting one to actually give out his true name, after all this time, and I don't think it necessarily will take away from any of our favorite, Jokers in the past. So, but we'll see. Something that we can debate down the line once we know what the real name is. All right. It was the Aquaman director, James Wan, promised this week that in his movie about Aquaman, it will not have as dark or, serious of a tone. So for the Aquaman fans out there that hated Batman versus Superman, and I know there's quite a few of you, that's a little bit of good news for you. And I don't think Aquaman really needs to have as dark of a tone, too. So I think that is kind of a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do a dark movie about Atlantis anyway?
I don't know, but
I mean, it's already kind of dystopian as you can get on our world because it's sunk.
Right.
Let's make it darker. It's at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
They're going to have to do something to make it different. So making it dark would just be more of the same crap.
Right.
So,
well, there you go. All right, and Kurt Sutter fans, he has a new comic book series coming out. And just because the bastard TV show that got canceled, as it rightly should have because it was crap, doesn't mean that we don't still like Kurt Sutter. Some things fail, some things don't. But anyway, it was announced this week that he has a new comic book series from Boom Studios and titled Lucas Stand. The book will see Sutter transition from a gritty Shakespearean biker drama to supernatural fantasy. Luke Strand, it will be co-written by Sutter and Caitlin Kitteridge, and artist Jesus Havas, who did Clive Becker's Hellraiser series. The series revolves around the titular anti-hero, a former special ops soldier who attempts suicide, is instead spared by the angel Gabriel. Gabriel tasks Stan with executing renegades and helping to restore the balance between heaven and hell. For each kill, Stan will remove one sin from his bloodstained past. Except for the special ops, kind of sounds like Constantine, but hey, that's just me. Throwing that out there.
This actually sounds like a rewrite of a different story where it was a whole bunch of demons escaped hell, and the devil has a dead cop come back to life, and if he hunts down these demons and puts them back in hell, then he gets to relive his life. And
right.
It sounds really derivative of other things.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Like I said, I like Kurt Sutter as a writer from his days of the Shield. Love Sons of Anarchy. So I think it will be a good series, even if we have seen it before, and hopefully it's successful enough that maybe Kurt Sutter could actually, bring back another TV show that won't get canceled in the first season and actually, be good. So there you have it. And I'm only mentioning this, which I thought was kind of interesting. Margot Robbie is, kind of gotten in the nerd universe now because she's playing, Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad movie coming up in August. But apparently there is a Tonya Harding movie coming out, and Margot Robbie will be playing Tonya Harding. No, we don't.
She can swing a bat.
See, you got to the punchline before I did. But I like where you knew where I was going with this.
Mm-hmm. Kind of hard to miss that one.
No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, while we don't usually cover figure skating, Brendan and I grew up in the '90s, and we remember it very vividly. I mean, that whole controversy, controversy in figure skating, which should never happen, but it did, and so I want to see this movie. I want to see Margot Robbie play the figure skater. And I will admit, I love Margot Robbie as an actress. She is, turning out to be, pretty amazing in some of the stuff that she does. She was actually one of the bright spots of that god-awful movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. mostly because she got naked in it. But anyway, so yeah, she'll be playing Tanya Harding. And last but not least, this is a little bit of gaming news that we have. This was one of the bright spots of us getting to go and see Batman versus Superman this week because they had a trailer for Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. The game will be coming out on June 28th. And for all of you Lego video game fans out there, this game actually looks a lot of fun. We'll definitely check it out and be doing a review on it. But the trailer looked amazing. And so there you have it. I don't know. Are you a big Lego video game person, Brendan?
I'm not a big fan. I've played them. I mean, they just pump out so many of them. They've got the Harry Potter and Indiana Jones and Star Wars.
Right.
They've got one for every Star Wars. So I haven't gotten around to playing everyone. I played the original trilogy one. I think back on the Xbox 360 when it first came out, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, they're good games. I just kind of lost track of them over the years, got into other things. So
I gotcha. All right. There was one thing I did miss, and this just kind of breaks my heart and ruins my childhood a little bit. But we did report a while back that, yes, CBS would be rebooting the MacGyver series. Don't really know why, but, I guess I don't really know why, because MacGyver was so cool in a lesser technological age. I just don't see how it's going to be as relevant with all the stuff that he did now. But anyway, but here we are. This is what we're doing. And they did find their MacGyver, and it will be Lucas Till. And the reason we are reporting this is he was in the X-Men movies. In case you didn't know, he played Havoc in the X-Men franchise, the latest one, starting with when they go back in time. So there you have it. We have our MacGyver. I really just don't. I just can't get behind this series, Brendan. I really can't.
I don't understand the point. I mean, seriously, what like, it's not. This isn't a series that, when they're looking back at series to redo. And I'm not saying they should do Firefly at this point, but I'm just going to use it as an example, because we did get the movie to kind of tie up the storyline. So, but they should be looking for shows that had more one and done, but have a devoted cult following. Bring them back, give them the time and necessary character development, and let them have a proper run.
Right.
But shows that had a 5, 6, 7, 8 year run. Why? We've seen the story. We know what it is. It's good. We still go back and watch it every once in a while online.
Right. And even MacGyver kind of went off the rails a little bit when they started making him try to be more like Indiana Jones, and he found the lost city of Atlantis. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little off the rails. But that was the great thing about TV is you could have an 8-year run and then come back and do a made-for-TV movie. I mean, Murder, She Wrote lasted, 12 years? And then they did how many made-for-TV movies with her and had her come back?
Right.
Why is it that we don't do that anymore? Or limited, X-Files had 6 episodes, a limited series, and it turned out great. So... But this is, and I promise everybody, this is not this week's Sign of the Apocalypse. We're going to get to that. I know a lot of times when we report news, it seems like we're jumping ahead and we're talking about this week's Sign of the Apocalypse, but we're not. Here is the description of this series. He's smart. He can never feel like he fits into a world that is establishment, so he's always a bit of an outsider. He's very crafty. He's very smart. All kinds of science and mathematics and engineering. And... this was the creators. I wanted to put my MacGyver story around something like a North by Northwest. He gets blamed for something that he had designed, something really big. That's something everybody wanted, and now someone has weaponized it, and everyone's coming after him. He's running for his life, and he's trying to clear his name.
MacGyver's now Robert Oppenheimer?
I guess. With a little Cary Grant from North by Northwest. But yeah, He's running for his life. He's trying to clear his name. Not quite unlike the structure of Enemy by the State. Not quite, but unlike. So imagine the Enemy of the State if Will Smith had the brains of MacGyver. So you're basically rewriting Enemy of the State and putting MacGyver in there. Come on. Way to be original, everybody.
I'm sorry, this sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I'd rather just go back and watch old MacGyver.
Which is what I do, because it's on Netflix. In fact, we're going to go ahead and tell you early. That's what you should be streaming. I do actually go back and watch MacGyver. The first few seasons, were great. I think my favorite, one of my favorite episodes is the one where he, he steals that map and he uses it as like a sled down, the sand dune. Anyway, so yeah, there you go. An Enemy of the State version of MacGyver. Good job. That sounds about as great as War Games 2, where you. Anyway, okay. Well, that's our news.
Yeah.
And sorry to put a bad taste in your mouth, but we have some reviews to get to. And the very first thing that we're going to talk about briefly is Daredevil Season 2, because if all of you people haven't finished binge watching it yet, then you're not really nerds. And while we are not going to go into our full review, you can go online and listen to that. We're just going to briefly tell you a little bit about, our initial impressions of it. We both, gave it a perfect 10. We really couldn't find anything wrong with it. And Brendan, what was the best part of Daredevil Season 2 for you?
Well, I think the best part of Season 2 for me was just because I'm such a huge Punisher fan, and I've been a big Punisher fan since I was a kid reading the comics, was just seeing finally a well-written, well-acted Punisher on the screen. I mean, I've had well-acted Punisher, well-done Punisher in Thomas Jane, but the script around him and the villain sucked and the story sucked. So to have the marriage of someone who cared about the part with writers who actually cared about the part and were competent enough to put a good story on the screen, I think that was the biggest plus for me, was just being finally able to see my favorite character done right. Yeah.
We did talk a little bit about perfect casting in this series, and John Bernthal was perfect casting for it. It was incredible. You definitely expanded the universe of Daredevil 2 and introduced a lot of rich characters, and got some characters right, and, loved it. That's, like I said, we couldn't find much fault, really any fault with it. Even when there were a couple like lulls and stuff, just trying to explain, the story, it turned out to be simply amazing. It's the Daredevil series that I think we've always wanted, and it's the Punisher that we've always wanted. Nothing against Thomas Jane. I mean, he had a very good, movie version, and we've talked about it before. It's just, not a strong script and terrible acting when it came to the villains. But, this one, Punisher belongs in a series more than just a 2-hour movie. So, yeah. Anyway, like I said, you can go listen to us rant about it and talk more about it, but we definitely gave it a perfect 10. The other thing I wanted to comment on before I get to a Black Sails Season 3 review is our young Padawan, so to speak, Becca Stepanian. She is our high school young adult blogger, and she did her review this past week on Allegiant. Whatever that whole the Divergent series movies, the latest movie that came out, and stuff. And one of the things I want to comment on is I promised her that one of these days we're going to send her to a good movie that's not necessarily a John Green novel, because it seems like everything that she goes to see just turns out to suck. It's yeah, it's not really our fault. It's just that's what it is. So she gave it a final grade of 3. we've now had we've now had Mockingjay Part 2 and this Allegiant movie put into the same category as Nicolas Cage's Left Behind. That low. So there's the question I encourage everybody to go on our website and read. Well, that's all I'm saying.
I mean, to review it either, but hey.
Right. I encourage everybody to go read her full review. But this is a question I have to ask about movies for a young adult audience. Is it that nobody really reads the books? I mean, because the movies get based off very popular books. I mean, books that are very well received. The Divergent books, they weren't criticized for being bad. I guess because they are young adult. The Hunger Games books were praised very well. So, what is it about these movies that just tears the books or makes the books?
Well, I think
I don't know.
It's the same thing that happens, I think, to adult movies that are based off of books. Let's face it, there are a very small portion of this population, even for successful books, there's a very small portion of this population in the United States that actually reads.
Yeah.
So when they take a book that is successful, they're like, wow, we really should turn this into a movie, because if it was that successful with the small portion of the population that actually buys and reads books, we should turn it into a movie. Well, how are we going to do this? Nobody reads. Well, let's dumb it down for the masses.
Well,
and I can tell you that's probably a verbatim conversation by movie studio execs.
I wouldn't doubt it. So I think it's almost just an insult by the studios that, they don't think the audience is sophisticated enough to get the story. Well, you know what? Here's a little lesson for you. The Star Wars story in 1977 wasn't a dumbed-down version of anything. It was very much a mythological story that dealt with a lot of allegory and a lot of things to discuss, even though it really is just about good versus evil and getting past temptation. But, we as young kids, we got that. We understood that. They didn't have to dumb anything down. Are we literally the last generation that really is getting a good education, that is being taught to read good books and ask questions? I think so.
Yes. Because, and I saw this, there's a problem, George Takei shared this, there's a math problem going around where the math problem was posed to the student. If Mikey ate 4/5 of his pizza and Joey ate 5/6 of his pizza, how is it possible that Mikey ate more pizza? And the question was, how is that possible? Well, all things being equal and the two pizzas being the same size, it's not possible. But the kid said the only way it's possible is that Mikey's pizza was bigger than Joey's pizza. And that is correct. That is a correct answer. The teacher told him he was wrong. No, it's impossible because, 5/6 is greater than 4/5. It's like, yes, assuming the pizzas are the same size, but you didn't put that. So if the teachers can't write problems correctly using English and mathematics, how the hell can we educate our children?
Well, consider this a little commentary by nerds about word problems. We all have to do word problems in school, and we all fucking hate word problems. They're the worst. I don't want to know how fast the train is traveling and the other train going off in the direction. But it's a rite of passage. You have to go through it because it is part of critical thinking. It's like the old joke, I have a quarter, the quarter dime or whatever about making up 40 cents, and you're not thinking correctly that the other that one of them isn't the dime, so to speak. You're thinking of it in terms of you're not looking at it logically of what it is and listening to the words itself within the problem. Okay. And if you want a good movie reference about listening to the details, well, Die Hard 3, where they're having to solve all the stupid, ridiculous riddles to, do the bombs, and they're going back and forth with each other. When was the last time that we actually had anything like that shown in a medium where critical thinking is important. Well, shit, if you really want to get down to it, you kind of have to think a little bit with the Riddler and his riddles to save people, don't you? So Batman has to be pretty smart. He has to have an education.
It's just, our education system is so screwed in this country.
Well, so I'm getting to the point now that we shouldn't have any movies for young adults. We should just say, you know what, screw it. If you don't get it, you don't get it, okay? And maybe you need more of an education, but we're not going to dumb things down for you and stuff like that. It may not be popular. It may not.
When I was in high school or when I was in grade school and I was watching something with my parents, if there was something I didn't understand, I would ask my father, and my father would tell me, go look it up. And there was a big-ass, unabridged Webster's Dictionary that must have weighed 50 friggin' pounds, and it was on a pedestal. And I had to go over and flip through that damn thing and find it, and then explain it to my father once I read it, and then we'd have a discussion about it. And that's how you learn. You have to actually you have to expose yourself to new things and then look them up and educate yourself on them. We don't do that anymore. We teach for a test, and then we just send them out into the world thinking they're all going to go to college and make $80,000 a year.
Well, you know what? Without an education, there's the other way of looking at life. The world does need ditch diggers, so, but you can learn how to do that. Well, we don't know what the future is for young adult, movies, but maybe it's all the Power Rangers fans. I'm sorry. No, I'm just not trying to insult Power Rangers fans, but I am kind of, because if you like that show and didn't really like Voltron, you're just a moron.
He's anyway, not sorry.
Yeah. All right, so you'll get a full review this week by Craig Jackson on Season 3 of Black Sails, but I wanted to mention it real quick before we get to this week's Side of the Apocalypse. And we also wanted to talk a little bit about, remember, one of our favorite comedians, Gary Shandling, who passed away this week, but we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. If you are a Black Sails fan and you were complaining that Season 3 was a little slow, they did that on purpose because you probably had the biggest spectacle in the season finale and really turning up the heat on all the events that will lead to Treasure Island, which, this is a prequel for. Season 3, I can tell you, ended on a bang. It was simply amazing. I would probably, me personally, rate it a 9 out of 10. I love this show for so many reasons. Again, you have to know the backstory of Treasure Island, and you can't just get a Cliff Notes version. There's so many little references that you're not going to get unless you read the book. One of the things they explained was the black spot curse that the book talks about. They brought that back out into the show. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then go read Treasure Island. So that's all I have to say on that little part. One of the great things is the naval tactics that they bring out, the old school naval tactics. Stars has done. They're not always great on some of their series, but the ones that they are, like Spartacus in this one, and even Outlander to a point, even though it is a little too romantic for us. Everything they bring into it. The level of carnage, not shying away from subjects, really putting you into, a disgusting world. Black Sails isn't like watching a graphic novel, kind of like, what the Spartacus series was. It feels very real, and it's disgusting and steamy, and, you wouldn't want to live in those conditions and everything, and, it's about who you can trust. More than anything else, and then you start to realize that, the pirates are actually more honorable than the British. But while this season, again, might have been a little slow, and you dealt with a little philosophical sides, the season really was about John Silver and Captain Flint and their relationship and what it will be, and then them realizing that eventually it will probably deteriorate in what will set up the book Treasure Island. But getting there is fun. The battle scenes are amazing. And, we lost a few characters along the way. But having Ray Stevenson play Blackbeard with his little fleet, So if you're a Black Sails fan and you haven't seen the season finale yet, after the show is done, if you're listening, go watch it. If you haven't done the entire season, it will be a lot of fun binge watching. And I almost feel like season 3 probably should be binge watched more than watching it from week to week. But they definitely ended on a high note. Wasn't perfect. And a lot of characters that you may have hated in the beginning that you will dislike now, and vice versa. But Toby Stephens is just terrifying, and I'm glad to see him in a good villainous role, because after watching the James Bond movie he was in, he was kind of laughable. This one was perfect for him. And for all you Navy guys out there, again, you like naval history, the old school tactics are just amazing. It's like watching a series unfold of, like the Horatio Hornblower series or Master and Commander. So that's my
Which, hey, by the way, since it's not going to be a movie series, if you're looking to option something, there's a whole series of books on Master and Commander. Hint,
right.
Get on that.
Right.
Somebody, please.
All right, we got Chloe with us that's going to be finishing out the show. All right. But before we get to Batman versus Superman, a couple more things that we got to do, and then we're going to get to it. Again, I wanted to mention we wanted to remember one of our favorite comedians, Gary Shandling, who passed away this week. If you are not familiar with Gary Shandling, and young audiences may not, because his two iconic series were in the 80s and early 90s. But if you grew up, during that time, he had some very groundbreaking series that, are kind of the same formats are being redone nowadays. His first one being the Gary Sanders Show, a comedian where he basically directly talks to the audience, and he'll stop in the middle of the credits, and it was just him being, his favorite comedic self more than anything else. But it was a very huge hit for Showtime back when it was starting up as a network. And the theme song is just absolutely amazing. It's pure satire. If you don't know what I mean, you need to go look online for the Gary Shandling theme song, because it's basically the writer making fun of the fact that he's having to write the theme song, which is just comedic genius. And the Larry Sanders Show, which again was groundbreaking for HBO back, in the early 90s, before you had things, like The Wire and Oz and stuff. But it was about the inner workings of a late night talk show, back when you were crossing over from Johnny Carson to Jay Leno, and you had Letterman.
And really, that's what really gave birth to that show, with the controversy between Letterman and Leno, and who was going to succeed Johnny Carson. And that show kind of was given birth out of that controversy, and it was just satire on the whole thing, and it was absolute brilliance. And really, a show like the Larry Sanders Show was one of the first original scripted shows by HBO. So the reason that show's success is the reason why you have shows like Game of Thrones today. So if you like watching original programming on HBO, you better think kindly on Gary Shandling, because he's the reason for it.
Well, Bill Maher gave a very good tribute to him on his show on Friday night, and they came out through the comedy circuit together and stuff. And I agree with Bill Maher on one thing that he says. And the two series that he had, even though you may not have seen him here and there over the last 25 years, what he did is a legacy, and very giving with the people that he worked with. Very, very, funny and satirical in his own way. And he didn't have to cuss up a storm like Eddie Murphy or anything like that. But the Larry Sanders Show is probably my more favorite because, again, of what you just talked about, Brendan. And the fact that all the behind-the-scenes, stories that go on with, your co-hosts and stuff are based off real things. And you had people come in and out of that show. It was funny to see kind of a darker version of Carol Burnett making fun of herself, or, Rip Torn, before he was ripping on everybody in Men in Black. Think of him as a producer, for a talk show. There was one funny line, because I was watching season 1 yesterday, that just walking and you have to catch. It's like, wow, who knew Harrison Ford did impressions? He does a great Carol Channing. Yeah, and you just have, and it's walking and talking it so fast that you have to just pay attention to the things that they say, and that's how brilliant the writing is. Before you had Jeremy Piven as the superstar agent / studio head as Ari Goldman, think of him as a head writer trying to write something funny for people like William Shatner, you know. But yeah, go find the Larry Sanders Show. If I could suggest either one, the Larry Sanders Show for the early 90s, and it really spoke to the time, and him commenting on other talk shows, like Arsenio Hall.
And if you are young and you don't know who Gary Shandling is, then I direct your attention to the recent Marvel movies, because he was the senator who was a Hydra planet.
Senator.
Which is why earlier I said Hail Hydra.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, he did this really great movie about 12 years ago called What Planet Are You From?, about an alien who has to come impregnate a woman, and yeah. Him and John Goodman going back and forth. That's all I have to say, so you know it's going to be funny. All right, we're getting a little ahead of schedule, so we're going to save this week's Sign of the Apocalypse for towards the end of the show, because we want to actually get right into Batman versus Superman.
Oh,
and
okay.
this is what we're going to do. We're going to start with everything that went wrong with the show, with the movie, the things that we hated. Now, to keep in mind about how we rated, we're all a little bit different. Brendan gave it a 5 out of 10. Chloe, in her full review, gave it a 6, which is adequate. And I was a little bit more generous, and I gave it a 7. But no one is saying this is a great movie, and it isn't. Okay. So for those of you out there that are ragging on critics and talking, you know, and I've seen comments on Facebook and mutual people that, you know, in our industry that we know, we can't look at this movie through fanboy eyes. We have to be logical about it, just like we did with Episode 7, okay? And there's a lot of things wrong with it. And one of the major things that we are going to talk about, I have a little funny letter that I will read in a moment. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and get that. We're going to jump right into, this is what I think the worst problem of the movie was. Jesse Eisenberg playing Lex Luthor. I'm dumbfounded on why he was cast, and then after watching his performance, it's like, I fucking told you so. Seriously? What were you smoking when you thought Jesse Eisenberg would be better than Bryan Cranston as Lex Luthor?
Or anybody else on planet Earth.
Well, I mean,
Right.
Jesse Eisenberg is, you know, usually actually a pretty decent actor. At least he's entertaining most of the time. Yeah, yeah.
I don't like him as an actor. I think he plays the same thing over and over again. He's a less funny Will Ferrell. To me, he was just him on screen. That's all I saw was Jesse Eisenberg being Jesse Eisenberg, doing Jesse Eisenberg as a bad footballer.
He was not Jesse Eisenberg this time, whether you like him or not, in my opinion. But
No. I mean, and I agree with Chloe. He played something different than what he normally plays, and he does play the same kind of character in
he's
movies.
usually kind of like the straight guy, you know, like, hey, what's going on over here? You know, kind of farm guy. I don't know. I'm trying to do my impression of like a straight guy. You know what I mean? Like not sexually straight, but you know, like
Right.
Well, then he was a straight guy trying to be something crazy, and it didn't work.
Well, I mean,
some people are defending it. But it didn't necessarily work for me either.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion, okay? But I think if your villain is way off the mark and just is not doing it well, then you basically have, as good as the movie is with everybody else, then the movie's going to sink right then and there. You have to have an excellent villain. That's especially in a superhero
that
movie.
Villain is Lex Luthor, which is like the most famous Superman villain, pretty much. You know, or one of the well-known. Like everybody has an idea of what Lex Luthor is supposed to be.
Right.
And unfortunately, you can't really deviate too much from that.
And here's my biggest problem with like even how it was written, how the character was written. His manipulations of Superman, you know, kidnapping Martha Kent. So I'm gonna torture your or I'm gonna threaten to kill you, your mom, if you don't go kill Batman. Oh, I got a better idea. I'm Superman. How about I slowly kill you because you're way too narcissistic to let yourself die until you reveal to me where Martha is, and then I'll go save her myself, and I don't have to kill Batman. Because I don't have to kill you either. I can just make you hurt so bad that you think you're gonna die, and then you'll scream for me to stop because you're a weak little pansy. So, it made no sense. Why would Superman just go off and say, "Oh, okay, now I'm gonna kill Batman"?
I think he just wanted to talk to Batman.
Well,
I think his whole plan was to talk to Batman and maybe like form some kind of alliance before he had to do anything.
Yeah, but look, I don't know. The whole writing on the movie pissed me off.
Look, I understand. I mean, about trying to pit Batman versus Superman and turn them against each other, and and how you arrived there. There's many different ways. First of all, you already had the perfect setup of making Superman look like a bad guy and everybody hate him anyway, and then basically expanding on Bruce Wayne and Batman's suspicions of this alien. You didn't have to. You didn't have to kidnap Mom and all that to really pull the strings. You had enough there. Okay, they were already didn't like each other. Okay, so if you just wanted some more screen time for Diane Lane, well, fine. I mean, I like her too, but have some more sweet moments with. I mean, the only thing that really came out about her being kidnapped was when Batman rescued her and "Hi, I'm a friend of your son." Yeah, I kind of figured. I mean, it was a funny
took a bit
scene.
more screen time too.
Right. My first major problem really is that this movie is 2.5 hours long of a very choppy, just weirdly edited scenes. And if you're gonna have
that was my major issue.
Yeah. So if that's the way you're going to edit the movie, you could have dropped this movie to an hour and a half and gotten to the fucking point without having to do all of this. But if you need all of this necessary, dream sequences, if you need to tell
and that's where they had the biggest problem with the editing, was dream sequences.
Well, yeah. I know that some of them might be important to Justice League, okay, and that's fine.
I could.
But here's the thing. If you're going to do all of that, I'm interested to see what the director's cut's really going to be, because I know Zack Snyder has said that the movie really was about 3 hours, okay? And my biggest fear is this is like another version, like another Kingdom of Heaven, okay, where the theatrical version just didn't make. You knew the movie could be good, but the theatrical version was wrong, because of how it was edited, and you needed the 4-hour version to make this great movie and for everything to make sense. So I'm hoping that what we get on Blu-ray in July is going to make this movie a lot better from the editing perspective.
And I don't want just more footage. I want, the editing to actually make sense. And I'm hoping that the director's version will have that. Much like the better versions of Blade Runner versus the theatrical cut.
Right.
But because the dream sequences, they were just so jarring and out of place. And look, I get what they were trying to. I get what they were trying to, kind of foreshadow with Darkseid being the JLA villain. I get that, but it's just all of a sudden, 1 minute he's drinking a bottle of $1,000 Bordeaux, and the next minute he's freaking in Mad Max. What the hell was that? So
Batman and the Dead looks kind of cool. I don't know.
But it just was weird. I don't know.
Yeah, how do we need to keep telling the origin story of Batman again?
No.
Did we? I don't.
Honestly, this movie could have been called Orphan Brawl 2016.
Yeah. But my mother's named Martha. But my mother's Martha, and she's in trouble.
Oh, God, that was one of the worst moments in the movie, really. They bonded over my mommy's named Martha. So really, Superman and Batman are just two mama's boys.
Yeah.
In a way, though, I actually never connected the two, though. So I never connected to the two, so I thought it was kind of cute in a way. That is true.
I thought, just a quick little scene of them marching to, a funeral and him seeing the graveside of his parents' names is good enough to, hey, my parents got killed,
Right, but no,
I
let's
thought that
show
was
it
good
again.
enough.
Let's bring in two very fine actors and actresses in their own right to sit there for 30 seconds to get shot in this super slow-mo montage of pearls dangling everywhere in the 45, ripping the pearls apart, which how the hell did that even happen anyway? I mean, that would never happen in real life. You would not get your gun so close to a girl, and the angle that would have to be at, that she would have to be bent over for the pearls to be dangling. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just that whole scene was stupid.
Well, I know that because this is a different universe than Christopher Nolan's and anything that we've seen, you have to kind of give an origin story to these characters.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And he briefly did it.
Right. Okay. Well, if that's really what you want to do, then why are we doing Batman versus Superman right now? Why hasn't there been a Batman solo movie to where you have that origin story setting up the character, or we're going to have one right before,
and
Justice
honestly,
League?
Yeah, much like
said,
what Marvel MCU does, actually have the heroes' individual movie first and then put them together. Yeah, but
well, I can tell you why, because DC thinks they need to catch up to Marvel right now, and so they're scrambling.
They're doing
to
it
put
wrong.
everything. Yeah, exactly what they're doing is wrong, but I'm just telling you their reasoning behind it. They think they need to catch up to Marvel right now. They have to be where they are. So, which I think is completely wrong for two reasons. One, because they're not setting up the universe organically and through one hero at a time, and two, because once the Avengers Infinity War is over and you get into Phase 4 of Marvel, you're talking about now you're going with DC's heavy hitters versus Marvel's B-level stars.
Yeah.
So it would be advantageous for them to wait 5 years and set this thing up slowly. But no, they're not going to do that because they want money right now. So they're just going to rush and put it together. But, like what Marcus said, though, if you needed to tell, first of all, who doesn't know Batman's parents got killed after he went to a movie when he was a little kid?
Yeah, even people who
really,
barely know anything about Batman.
I mean, so everybody knows that at this point. I think you'd be hard-pressed. I mean, honestly, you could probably find more people on the street that know how Batman's parents died than know who George Washington is. So,
wow, that's sad.
But what Marcus said when they show him marching to his, to the funeral, that would have been good enough. That's all you need. It's just like with the Punisher and Daredevil 2. They talk about his tragedy, they reference it, but they don't show it because they don't need to. It's been done for 3 other times on camera, so it would have been much better storytelling that way. But yeah,
and I want to point out 2 more things about that too. First, when you got Tim Burton's Batman, how did that movie really jump in? It jumped into, the mystery of Batman. Nobody had really seen him. There was talk, and you had this really great scene of him, taking care of 2, robbers. But you don't get to the origin part of that of how he developed until later in the movie when it's more pivotal, and he's, and he sees that. Especially with Vicky Vale walking up, or she finally, understands how he is. The other thing is, again, you don't start off with that part of the story either with Batman Begins. You start off with Bruce Wayne as he is still trying to find himself, and he's in a prison camp somewhere right before he meets Ra's al Ghul. All the flashback scenes happen when they're supposed to, okay, to set up the story.
When they're pivotal.
Right. This is Batman versus
I never
Superman.
thought about that.
Yeah. You don't need to start off with his funeral. And the other thing is, I get that he discovers what's going to become the Batcave, or, that he's not afraid of bats or anything like that. That whole thing, where he's rising up, and you don't see any cables, like he's some kind of Jesus figure rising up to the heavens, being pulled out of the well, and then it forms the shape of a bat. Come on. That is just fucking lazy writing there. You're not making anything cool.
It was very hokey, if you ask me. So we've got Jesse Eisenberg and the editing and some of the Batman origin story. The other thing that there's two other things that really bugged me about this movie. The first one I'm going to hit on is the soundtrack. And I was especially disappointed by the soundtrack because of Hans Zimmer. He has done such wonderful work on movies like, Black Hawk Down and Gladiator. But apparently on this movie, they forced him to work with somebody who goes by the name of DJ Junkie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that pretty much just kind of says it all right there. And I think Hans Zimmer just said fuck it and hit the fuck it button, because the entire soundtrack to me felt like it got lost in the dark, tripped, hit its head, and thought it was Inception. Because everything was wrong. Whether it was a piano doing it or a violin, it was just bloody annoying.
Well,
I don't
that seems to actually be a trend with a lot of movies, though, these days. It's not just this one, so.
Yeah, but you know what movie
the first
where...
one that I've noticed it.
Yeah, but you know what movie that it really did work in, where you had different sounds and themes working within your music? Yeah, Tron Legacy. And Daft Punk soundtrack is a pretty fucking amazing soundtrack.
Oh, Tron Legacy is one of the best soundtracks out there.
That's part of my biking music.
But Daft Punk was more than just minor notes going bang, bang, bang,
right.
bang, bang, which is what this was. And it drove me into, to me, it was intrusive. It was obnoxious. And then juxtaposed against Jesse Eisenberg, who looks like Carrot Top on crack in the movie, it was supposed to be like I know what they were going for. They were going for this theme of Darth Vader with the minor notes and the Imperial March, but up against Carrot Top on crack in Chuck Taylor All Stars, it just looks stupid.
Yep, but here's
on a side note,
here's
the Wonder Woman music was pretty awesome, actually. Oh, the music they played right when Wonder Woman appeared was actually pretty awesome. I started yeah.
Well, here's the other thing to consider too. First, you don't need to have anybody by that their name starts with DJ. Okay, be a part of some cinema score for a superhero movie. There's a reason it's called a score, because you get an orchestra. Okay, and yes, you can have little great things interweave with your orchestra that makes it cool, but not something that's going to take a record turntable or sound effects or anything. This isn't Doctor Who, where you're taking sound effects that sound science fiction and they're going to become iconic over 50 years. No, there's a reason that these scores work for these movies. Okay, because you have to have a traditional orchestra, and like Brendan touched upon with what they were trying to do and mimic, the Imperial March from Star Wars and all that. Well, guess what? Yeah, I see what you're trying to do. Fine. But you did it but John Williams did it with a traditional orchestra, okay? So you're talking about two versions of mediums of music that don't mesh well. And anybody that thinks they do, you're a moron. I'm sorry, okay? It is nothing against this other medium of music that, DJs and all that with electric turntables do. I'm not knocking that, okay? And there are movies where that does work. It's not for this movie, okay? And whether it's Zack Snyder or studio heads or anything like that, there's a reason that traditional scores work, okay?
Yeah.
We have seen it constantly, time and time again, with iconic scores work ever since Star Wars. It's not going to go away. You don't need to experiment with it, all right? So.
In fact, please don't.
No, I'm more open to experimental scores, but maybe not for this type of movie. You are correct, but I I know it's another Jesse Eisenberg movie, but Social Network, Trent Reznor.
I'm not knocking the Social Network. He was good in it. He played a very good Mark Zuckerberg. And I'm going to point.
The soundtrack for that was pretty awesome. I have a weakness for industrial music. I won't lie, but
yeah. And I like
I'm
industrial.
Just saying, I'm not saying it can't work in other movies, but when you have a big, grandiose movie,
an epic movie,
it doesn't fit. I mean, especially when they're trying to merge it with it. Just everything about this seemed like it was so just flung together, and it just didn't work. and I'm a huge Batman fan. Marcus knows how much I love Batman and Nightwing. So this, and granted, we'll get to that in the second half of the show. But I mean, I was just very disappointed with this movie. It actually, I felt I was being generous giving it a 5. So, and I only did that because there were certain performances that I did appreciate. But the last thing that really bugged me about this movie, and it just, to me, this whole movie felt like it was bookended by DC cliches. You had the death of Batman's parents at the beginning, and then the death of Superman at the end, which to me carries absolutely zero emotional weight, even though they tried to make it this big emotional scene, because you know he's coming back in JLA.
Yeah, we all know.
There's not even a question. But you know, it's not even, I think, or maybe, or possibly, or perhaps, we know. And they even foreshadow it as they see the friggin', the dirt on the box, rumbling at the end as it goes black. I was like, here, let's have this great scene about emotional weight and how they're burying an empty box in one place, and there's a small little funeral where he's actually being buried in another. And then, oh, by the way, he's not really dead. Well, no shit, he's not dead. Why the hell did you do it in the first place?
Well, I don't think you need to, I don't think you actually needed to kill him. I understand that, him being a sacrifice is what allows his character to be accepted by the people after they're already afraid of him and, people are on the fence about him through this movie. So I get that. I think it does serve a purpose, all right? And it is emotional. It's nice and all that. But you know what really makes that scene? It's not the bandwagon funeral with the American flag draped over the coffin. It is all about the farm stuff, and it's really cool to have Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince there, and then Batman talking to her about finding the metahumans and stuff like that, and then you are kind of set up. I don't hate the scene, okay, personally.
I just hate the choice to kill him in the first place because I remember in high school buying the Death of Superman comic, and I remember feeling so ripped off when they brought him back to life like a month later.
Well, you're going to have to blame the comic writers for that. I mean, they're just being homage to what already happened in the comics.
It's just,
for how many comics were there? Like 8?
Well, I mean, it goes, but, Marcus, we've talked about this before. How does every Superman story work? He kicks the bad guy's ass, then they get kryptonite, then Lois Lane saves him, then he ends up winning the day. What happened in the movie? Can somebody tell me? Who saved him from the kryptonite? Oh, that was Lois Lane, wasn't it? Yeah. Who killed Doomsday at the end? Oh, yep, that was Superman after Lois saved it. It's the same damn crap with Superman over and over again.
Look, I think it's just. I think at the end of the day, it's just you just don't like Superman, and there's nothing going to be anything out there that's going to make you like Superman as a character, and that's fine.
Oh, see, I didn't realize you didn't like Superman. That does make sense. Okay.
But give me something new with Superman. It's the same formula.
What really are you going to do new with Superman? I mean,
I don't know. They
Superman
did 52 a couple years ago to make him weaker. Can we kind of bring that in?
Well, you do have storylines where he does lose his powers, or there was the animated show where he actually gave his powers to Lois for like a day and stuff. And Smallville explored some of those storylines. But anyway, getting back to the farm, the ending scene and stuff. The really nice part about that whole scene, besides Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince talking, is Lois on his bed, and that he had the engagement ring mailed and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool, and it made it emotional and whatnot. And maybe it didn't need to be there, but it did help the scene and stuff. The only thing that I think that can make Superman dying, and then is how you bring him back. If you don't explore a little bit about what brings him back, if he just voila, like your David Copperfield, then I don't think it's a big payoff. Okay, you need to explore some, Kryptonian technology, what really gets in there. If you're going to have this whole god-awful Batman origin scene that's completely unnecessary, then I think you can dedicate some time to showing a really cool way of how Superman comes back and the technology behind it.
Yeah, and that's what the next film is for, I guess.
Well, but at least with when Tim Burton was trying to do Superman Lives, that's part of what they were exploring, is they really delved into the Kryptonian technology within the screenplay, and how Superman was going to change a little bit coming back, because that's the other thing to consider is, are we going to get the same old Superman? How is he going to be different? Because if he really isn't going to be different, then he really isn't dead. Okay, he's just sleeping. It's like that episode of The X-Files where we think Mulder's dead, and then 3 months later they dig him up and he still has a fucking heartbeat. I was annoyed by that part of X-Files. I didn't mind them, season 8, Mulder getting, abducted, but that was just weird. So, all right. Really, the biggest problem about that movie is, like, you have to wait so long to get to the good stuff. Like, the action sequences were good, and
they were great.
And I did, even though it looked a little too like the Immortals movie with Henry Cavill, I did like everything about it. And then I know Brendan's complained that, Lois Lane has to save the day again. It was a lot of fun. You had this great payoff at the end. It just took too long to get there. Okay. So that makes me, again, very interested to see what the director's cut is going to be, how you really connect everything and not make it so bad with these scenes, with the editing, that if it'll flow evenly into, each other. I agree with Brendan. I don't know. The whole bonding over my mother's name was Martha and all that, that was kind of like, whatever. And I don't know. It just seems like Batman and Superman become instant friends after they're trying to kill each other. Which is
I would have
kind
liked a little bit more like dialogue. Hey man, I'm really sorry that we were,
Well, it's just like I think it's completely unnecessary. Hey, I'm a friend of your son's. I'm like, you don't really even need to say anything. I know you're trying to create a funny
it's kind
line.
of not true. I was about an inch away from stabbing your son through the heart with kryptonite 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And
we might go out
I
for
actually
pints
liked
later,
Ben Affleck in this movie. Yeah, it's like I actually liked Ben Affleck in this movie, but the script writing, some of the choices were just bonkers crazy.
Well, and there are some things that work about this movie, but as we were talking about it Thursday and a little bit Friday, I really do feel like that Jesse Eisenberg is the worst part of Batman versus Superman, because it's like you've never read a comic before. It's like you've never done any research or watched any other movies about people playing, or TV shows of people playing Lex Luthor. You tried to play it like you're the Riddler or the Joker in the Batman universe.
I like what Chloe said in her review, because I actually read your review, Chloe.
I would hope so.
I like the fact that she said that he was trying to Heath Ledger it and bring something new to the character and failed miserably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect the fact he really was trying to be different. He wasn't just trying to be like the mature.
Well, he couldn't pull that off. I don't think there's any way he could pull off that. That's why I was
and they
against the original casting.
Yeah, they cast him for whatever reason, and he thought he could bring something new, and I respect that. But
I respect trying to do something
new. If it was
new.
a different character, yeah.
Look, trying to do something new and make the character your own, like Heath Ledger as the Joker, yes, great, fine. Don't look like your Riddlin boy and all that. And at the same time, I don't think Lex Luthor needs to be that young. I just don't. I think you can kind of have...
Not unless Superman is like that. I don't know. He should be a little bit older than Superman.
And I think the worst scene was the scene at the gala where he's trying to give that speech. And it was clear to everyone, I thought one of two things happened with that scene. Either he was trying to convey Lex was incompetent, which didn't make sense to me, or he had forgotten his lines and they just said, fuck it, let's go with that. Because
right.
I think he was just trying to convey he has interrupted thought patterns, because I have some slight speech impediment sometimes too, when I'm my brain is too clustered with a whole lot of thoughts at once, where I'm the thing, I don't know.
Yeah,
so
but you know what? In a film, you can edit that.
Yeah.
I guess.
But here's the thing, with interrupted thought patterns though, and I get where you're coming from with that, and they're trying to they're trying to pile on this thing that he was abused by his father. But here's the thing, people who are very single-minded and driven, which Lex Luthor is, don't have interrupted thought patterns.
Exactly.
They're single-minded. That's kind of how it works. It's just,
well,
Okay.
So something a little funny for our audience. You've heard us talk about Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, and we pretty much all agree you suck. So we have kind of taken upon ourselves. There is a letter written. I wrote a letter Friday night, and we are formally asking for your resignation as Lex Luthor. Yes, we're calling you out on this show. That's right. So I'm going to read this letter. And it's eloquent. We're not totally ripping you apart like we did for the last 20 minutes and belittling your acting performance. But then again, we
not
are.
What I did to Michael Bay.
That's true. That's true. So for our fans
Although
out
you
there
read this,
that are
I'll be right
listening,
back.
that are listening to us live, and we'll be going back and listening to our show, and I will be posting this online after the show. Here's our letter asking Jesse Eisenberg to resign. Dear Jesse Eisenberg, we at That Nerd Show would like to formally ask you for your resignation as Lex Luthor in the upcoming DC Comics movies. Quite frankly, your acting was terrible, and we don't think you have any clue on how to play Lex Luthor. It seemed as if you were trying to play the Joker or Riddler from the Batman universe, and that you have never read any Superman comics or have seen how your predecessors portrayed Lex Luthor. All of them were better than you, and it's an insult that you did not watch and learn something from them. In fact, we feel that you should never be in any nerd movie ever again. As fans of superhero, science fiction, fantasy, and action movies, you would probably ruin those kinds of movies as you did Batman vs. Superman. This is not to say that you are a terrible actor. You were quite good in The Social Network, but that movie also had a strong script and great dialogue from Aaron Sorkin, which did help you. And we freely admit that great actors can be hampered by poor scripts. Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor in Superman Returns being the prime example. However, this was not the case for you in Batman vs. Superman. You were god-awful and have no idea on how Lex Luthor should be played. Now, we will not put all the blame on you. Somebody was dumb enough to cast you as Lex Luthor. So Zack Snyder gets partial blame because we could have had a great actor like Bryan Cranston playing Superman's arch nemesis. Wow, that would have made the movie a whole lot better. But if somebody has to take the fall for a subpar movie, then it should be you, and you should do the honorable thing, fall on your sword, and just resign from the role. Not to add injury to insult, but we're going to do it anyway. You are easy to replace, and it would be good. It would be for the good of the Justice League movies. So Jesse, please do the right thing. Just resign. We as fans know what we want from these kinds of movies, and it's not you. I wonder if we can still get Bryan Cranston. That would be awesome. So, pretty please, with sugar and a cherry on top, just resign for the good of the fans and the DC universe. After all, you wouldn't want us to boycott your non-nerd movies. There's a lot of us now, and it can happen. Just throwing that out there. We do have a solution for you. There is never a shortage of Nicholas Sparks romantic movies that you can be in. You still get to act. We won't boycott those movies because of you causing further controversy. We're not going to see those movies anyway. It's a win-win for all of us. So there you have it. We're asking for Jesse Eisenberg's resignation from the Lex Luthor role, and I think he should definitely listen to us, because you don't want to be in the Channing Tatum category of us just ripping on you all the time for ruining our favorite kinds of movies and raping our childhood.
Actually, for me, it'd be more cathartic for me if Batman just killed him in the next movie.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like, shut
You're
up.
done.
Snaps his neck. Done. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I would actually go for that.
That's
All right.
such a cruel fate, though, making Nicholas Sparks movies. Anyway.
Well, as I explained, I'm not saying he's totally to blame, but he's the easiest person to take the blame, and I think he was
Exactly.
the worst part of the film. So
I
don't.
feel bad for Ben Affleck when he got read those critic reviews though, because he had some serious sad face going on there.
That is
and
a funny
I do feel
video
bad
of them
for Ben
playing the
Affleck
sounds of
because-
silence.
Yes, and I do feel bad for him because and much to my pleasant surprise, because I was not a fan of his casting, I thought he was one of the bright spots of the movie. I was, like I said, very pleasantly surprised by his Batman. I still think he would have made a better choice for the director of the movie. But, hey.
He's going to direct the Batman movie.
That is good. I am glad to hear it. I think it'll be a far superior film.
I think Batman, Ben Affleck is a good example of how we can all be wrong sometimes as fans when we first hear something. I mean, pretty much all of us just cringed and like, really?
Don't tell me
especially when we heard
he. Okay with it.
Yeah, when he wasn't directing it. I mean, the movies that he has directed that he's been in, he's been phenomenal. Like I said, The Town is a great movie, and he, didn't overdo it. Was just great. But yeah, I mean, as an older Batman, as an aging Batman, he nailed it. I didn't really find fault with anything. I mean, yeah, some of the hokier lines and everything, but he obviously had really good chemistry with Jeremy Irons, who played Alfred. That was a great casting choice.
Snarky Alfred too.
Yeah.
Alfred for me in this movie was kind of like Cisco on The Flash, and not in a personality sense, but in the sense that they represented me as a fan watching the film, because all he did was complain and drink whiskey throughout the whole movie, and damn it, if I know what I'd be happier if I had a whiskey too. So, for me, he was very much the outlet of my frustration. It was like, well, at least somebody here realizes how stupid some of this is.
Right. Well, you also here's one reason to actually watch it again, because as upset as you might be with the entire movie, there's a lot of things that he does as Alfred that you may not catch the first time. Okay, and a lot of great things that make Jeremy Irons a fantastic actor, like the little mimicking, whispering to himself, while he's drinking whiskey.
Not for lack of trying, Even you've grown too old to die young, Master Bruce, if not for a lack of trying.
I will say this. With all of the movies that they've ever done about Batman, is it me, or is them casting Alfred? No one's ever got casting Alfred wrong. I mean, Michael Caine was great with Christopher Nolan.
There's just been different versions of Alfred.
Yeah,
and all good for different reasons.
There's been an evolution of Alfred from very polite and proper to kind of snarky to very snarky.
Well, what I'm hoping they do with this, and I hope they get into it. I hope we do get into it more in the Batman movie. There's two things that I'm really looking forward to in the Batman movie. One is more of Alfred's backstory, because I don't think this version of Alfred is your normal. I'm a butler who got pressed into service as a guardian. I really think
he seems definitely more jaded.
Well, I'm not only jaded, but he seems a lot more competent on the side of technological and weaponry, and so I'm wondering if there are stories out there versions where Alfred was actually retired MI6, and they hired him to be a butler, but really a bodyguard for Bruce. So I'm wondering if that's where they're going with that, which I think would be a very, very cool version. And then, basically James Bond was Batman's dad, or Batman's father figure. I mean, how awesome would that be?
Right.
And then,
Michael Gough, who played, Alfred in the Tim Burton movies, and then unfortunately the Joel Schumacher movies, he did more butler things and seemed more refined and all that, but you also saw that technological background that he had, and that he is exactly what Brendan is talking about. There's more to this man than what we think. So, I mean, it seems like no matter what, we tend to actually get Alfred right. I mean, I don't care much for Gotham, but the guy they have playing, Alfred on the show is a great actor, and he's doing a good job. So at least we've continued with that streak of getting good Alfreds.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm really interested to see more about in the Batman background is there's a small reference in there to the Killing Joke, and that's when you see Robin's suit and it says "Ha ha ha," the joke's on you.
Yeah, by the Joker.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of ways they can go with that, and if they do the Killing, or if they reference the Killing Joke again, that would be really interesting. For those, I'm not going to spoil the Killing Joke because there's actually going to be a movie coming out. Kevin Conroy is back as the voice of Batman. Mark Hamill's back as the voice of the Joker, and it's going to be the first rated R Batman cartoon. The Killing Joke's going to come out, I think, either later this year or early next year. So if you haven't read The Killing Joke, go read it, and do look forward to the new cartoon that's coming out. So I think it'll have a lot of insight onto where they're going to go with this version of Batman.
Yeah. Well, like we said, I mean, Ben Affleck really, really did nail it. Now, I mean,
he did.
Again,
I think he had the best lines in the movie.
Yeah, I think they wrote him very well.
Especially when he told Clark Kent, he goes, "And maybe that's just a Gotham and me, but we've had our fill of jackasses running around dressed up like clowns." To me, that's the one time in the movie I actually chuckled. I was like, "All right, that was pretty good."
And I applaud him for the workout. I mean, he was stacked and everything. Now, the only thing that I will actually say good about the score is, this kind of industrial music being put when he was working out. It fit at that moment, okay? Because he's doing like this old school workout. It's almost, like a Rocky and Rocky 2 type of workout.
Yeah.
And it worked. It just totally worked. But no, I mean,
I kind of was hearing a little Eye of the Tiger in my head when he was doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Ben Affleck, for all the crap that we give him, has turned out, as he has gotten older, a pretty good actor. I'm not saying
he's really grown.
I'm not saying a great actor, but he's choosing his roles a little bit wiser. He's, doing better projects. So I still like Christian Bale better as Bruce Wayne and everything, but that's all about Bruce Wayne when he's first starting and being younger and all that. Like, the worst movie out of that trilogy really is Dark Knight Rises, even though it wasn't a bad movie, but Christian Bale was a little hard to kind of believe as an older Batman. Because he wasn't really that far removed in age from the time that he did Batman Begins, and they just showed him scruffy instead of actually showing him with gray hair or anything like that. This Bruce Wayne, this is the one that is seasoned, been doing this for 20 years and has gone through, sidekicks and all of that. And that's really what Batman is by the time he joins the Justice League. He's already been around for a while, okay? Mm-hmm. And he's also fighting with a crew where he's the lesser of the heroes. He doesn't have to, he does a lot, but he doesn't have to do as much because he's fighting with actual superheroes with powers and all that, and he's really just the only human being,
And you kind of saw that in the final battle scene here with this movie too. Like, he was doing his best, but man, you can't
right.
do much as Batman.
Now, I want to ask everybody this: did you guys like the Batman suit? We always have a different, incarnation of the bat suit. What do you think, Brenda?
The later one was built for Superman combat. So, but the one before that I actually really liked. It was very classic to me.
Yeah.
It was the classic gray and black. So I get where they were kind of doing an homage to some of the more better well-known comic drawings of it. So I didn't.
It reminded me of the animated.
I had an issue with the texture of it though. I don't know. It just looked weird. The fabric that they used, or whatever it was, it had all these weird ridges on it, and I don't know. It wasn't bad. It's just not my favorite Batsuit.
I assumed it was just there to show, hey, it's fabric, but it's probably different fabric that's well beyond,
right.
I mean, like a really good armor.
Well, it just looks weird to me. I mean, it wasn't a bad suit. Like I said, it was just not my favorite.
Well, it looks like to me that they're trying to have this comic book feel to a suit, but they're also trying to look at more like a modern day type of suit where
Right.
you can see the threads and how the fabric is made, and I don't think those two worlds really clash. I mean, I don't necessarily mind the Superman suit. I'm definitely glad they're not doing underwear on the outside and stuff like that, and it works for what it is and how they explained it being Kryptonian and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the Kryptonian.
But if you're trying to do this comic book universe, okay, and look more like a comic book or a graphic novel, then you don't have to show the threads and all that. You can make it more slick. It's okay, and you're not going to ruin the look. But yeah, I definitely like. Whereas, and we've talked about this before, whereas the bat suit for the Christopher Nolan universe is supposed to be more modern. This is what it would be if you have a military weapon, but you're making it into a bat suit, okay? And it looks like that on purpose. Mm-hmm. You don't need to try to blend both worlds with these suits. So I will say this about the introduction of Wonder Woman. I was kind of on the fence about Gal Gadot as Diana Prince and everything, because she looked too skinny and not curvy enough. But once she kind of came out as Wonder Woman, I'm on board. I did like the uniform. I like how it fits within this universe. Very much like they've shown pictures of the new Aquaman uniform, and she was badass. You know,
she was. I think I've just been starved for years for Wonder Woman on screen, though. I really have.
Right. It seems like everything else about Wonder Woman the uniform has always been kind of hokey up to this point.
Yeah.
So I think them redoing it, you still get the red and the blue and all that with, gold. It's just this darker tone to it to fit within what this universe is. But she
and it
was
looks Kryptonian too.
Yeah, she was badass.
Yeah.
I didn't have any problem with her. I just want to see more of her. I thought, if they were going to include her in this movie, they really should have given her more in the first.
Right.
It just, and it's one again goes back to the problems I have with the writing and the script and the editing. I just, if she was going to be that integral to the movie, which she was, there's no way they could have defeated Doomsday without her.
Right.
Just give her more. And what she worked with Ben Affleck, she had pretty good chemistry with Ben Affleck. So, and as Chloe said, the fastest growing audience, the fastest growing demographic in video games and comics is girls between the ages of 18, or women between the ages of 18 and 35.
Right.
So give them what they want. Give us more Wonder Woman. And hey, frankly, guys don't mind looking at her either. So
guys love Wonder Woman.
So give us more. Give us more throughout the whole movie. Now, granted, she's getting her own movie, which is fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see how it goes there. Like I said, I didn't have anything wrong with her performance. I just wanted to see more of it.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with that.
Here's one thing that I do want to talk about the overall story. We've ripped it apart. We've talked about bad editing and bad writing. I know what they're trying to go with this story, and I don't mind the philosophical arguments that they're making with it about why Batman is suspicious, and he has every right to be. He's a more cynical Batman after everything that he's been through, and you don't know anything about this alien. That's a great storyline. It fits within what this is. I completely understand, how people are looking at Superman as someone who is accountable to none and can turn and then Superman and Batman looking at each other and hating each other based on how they do things. Clark Kent's obsession of he's basically just a vigilante. He needs to be stopped. He's not doing it just for good and all of that. Because he is the golden boy, so to speak. He's the Jesus incarnation of the superhero.
Critical coming from him.
Right, exactly. And that adds another interesting dimension to the story. Because you have these two superheroes that don't understand each other. They're always going to be kind of suspicious of each other, okay? And despite them becoming like instant friends, which I still hate, at least you could have gotten to them I have a mutual respect because we can work together, and hey, by the way, our enemies are common enemies, okay? I didn't even mind that it's Lex Luthor manipulating everything behind the scenes, because that's what Lex Luthor does.
Yeah, that's something he would do. Yeah.
Right. So, the whole like diabolical plan of getting there, it's like that's not a bad storyline. You work with that, but it does take a good, strong performance of something that's believable. Okay, look, you could have put Gene Hackman's version of Lex Luthor back into that movie of, manipulating everything behind the scenes with these two characters, and it would have been fine. Okay. It's just, when you're Lex Luthor and acting like the Riddler, it doesn't work that way, and I don't see the Riddler as trying to bring everybody together. That's strictly a Batman, villain.
Yeah.
How everything worked, and even building Doomsday, using Kryptonian technology. Again, I look at the overall script and what they did as a storyline. Okay, that's going to bring these two clashing together. That's going to set up Justice League. It's a good concept. Okay, you had the right things there. Okay, but again, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the execution, and that's why I'm going to bring it back around to talking about what the director's cut is going to be. I don't mind a 3-hour movie at all. I don't mind it being rated R.
None of us should as nerds.
But you have to have scenes flow evenly into one another. They have to make sense.
They can't just be chopping one back and forth and confusing.
So I'm going to bring up a good example of a classic movie that we all love. That's great with the script and stuff like that. The Godfather. Especially The Godfather Part 2, where you're telling this backstory of Vito Corleone
it's
and
been quite a while
his rise to power. Right. There's a version of The Godfather they call the Godfather Epic, where basically they take Godfather Part 1 and 2 and they kind of reverse it. So you start, it's all in chronological order. You actually start with Vito Corleone's rise and how he did, and there's a lot of deleted scenes that kind of put some perspective into the story that make everything flow nicely of how you're setting up these characters. Like, I don't think anybody realized there's a deleted scene in the flashbacks of Godfather Part 2 where how they actually meet Hyman Roth, and it's actually Vito Corleone that gives him his name, because I can't pronounce his real Polish name. The reason I talk about this, about the why they do this in chronological order and the why they do these scenes that flow very nicely into one another and to help shape up the story, it's a nice turn of phrase of watching this 4-hour Godfather mini-series, that will end with the, Michael Corleone and, after he's killed everybody in one and in his rise to power. It's okay to do that. I understand why you don't do it for theatrical releases. Again, Kingdom of Heaven. You don't want people sitting there for 4 hours. But you have this great storyline with Batman versus Superman. Please God, if you haven't finished putting all that together for the Blu-ray, please God, listen to us and put that together. We'll sit there and watch a 3-hour version if the execution is good. Okay? I might even be able to stomach Jesse Eisenberg a little bit more if everything flows a lot more evenly, So, one other question I want to get before we kind of get towards the end of our show, was everybody okay with Henry Cavill's performance as Superman? Because there's been a lot of complaints about him as just being too stoic and not enough, and I didn't really hate him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of where you're going. I am exactly where you're going with that, Marcus. I didn't hate him, but I can certainly see how people could think he'd be I don't know if stoic's the right word, but maybe aloof.
Right.
There were points in the movie where as he did much better as Clark Kent than he did as Superman. I will put that out. Because with Clark Kent, you got this fire, he's got these causes that he believes in as a journalist. But with Superman, he just seemed like up until the point where he realized his Martha Kent was in danger, he just seemed like he was just aloof to everything. Like the Senate blew up around him, and he basically kind of sighed. He puffed. It was really that's the reaction you get is just a resigned.
Well,
while the entire Capitol burning
probably
burns
kind of
around you.
Yeah, and I
But
Go ahead.
I think it does come down to, again, the execution of what they wrote and maybe scenes or takes they chose for the theatrical version, because
exactly, like, I think that a lot of this wasn't him. He just didn't really get a lot of like writing to like show his more human side, I guess.
Right.
And
well,
a lot of people complained about Man of Steel because like he was kind of like angry and emotional in that one, but he was kind of going on a journey in that one to find who he was as a character.
And Chloe, that's a very good point you just brought up, because they're talking about the juxtaposition of Man of Steel to this movie. I think they went way too far overboard in Man of Steel, distancing themselves from Man of Steel, because they kept on going on and on about how this area of the city is deserted. There'll be no casualties. First of all, we all live in big cities. We know there is no such thing as a deserted area of the city. Even if it's the docks at night on an East Coast port, there's somebody going to be there. So, it came off as hollow, pointless, and just really transparent, as in, we're like, yes, we realized we destroyed half the city in the first one and didn't even mention the fact that people got killed all around. So now we're hypersensitive to it and over-dramatizing the fact that no humans were involved, or no humans were harmed in the making of this movie.
Well, I'm gonna end this part right here by just saying I hope, again, the director's cut shows something a little bit better with his performance, because I don't think he's a bad Superman at all. I just think we need to see something a little bit different, and hopefully we'll see that with Justice League. Yeah. All right, real quick. This was this week's Sign of the Apocalypse, and it has to do with All-Con here in Dallas. Since we were all there last weekend, by no means are we complaining about the All-Con staff or anything like that, because they've been wonderful the past 12 years and everything. But this week's Sign of the Apocalypse has a lot to do with when you change locations and you grow bigger and you deal with a hotel that has never worked with you before and doesn't know how to handle anything. And it really comes down to the Westin Hotel in Dallas, who not only broke their contract about putting con people on the same floors together, but, helping ruin the schedule, which got all off and, helped ruin a lot of panels because people weren't showing up. And we had 2 different times for our Star Trek panel. All I want to say is this. I get trying to move to a bigger place. It's great when your con grows and you have to move someplace bigger. But if you can find a way to work with a hotel that you've worked with for a decade, that you have everything ironed out and all that, but you figure out a way that you can expand within those parameters, you should stay there. Because the clusterfuck,
or just move to a hotel in the same chain.
Right. Exactly.
Bigger hotel, same chain, because at least you've worked with them and you have that relationship. I mean,
what was it, a Marriott before?
Yeah, the parking at the Westin was terrible. The way we personally were treated by some of the management at one point on Saturday night was abysmal. It was. It left a lot to be desired.
We complain about conventions that we have to cover because of dealing with parking and all that, but at the same time, one of the things about the big Dallas Comic-Con that has moved to the Dallas Convention Center is because you can take the train right into it, and it is a lot easier to get around and stuff. And it just wasn't that. They weren't totally prepared for how to handle that specific, hotel. And the hotel didn't really make didn't make things easier on them. As for us covering All-Con in the future, I won't go as far as to say that we won't be doing it. We love All-Con. We love the cosplay and the people that come to it. We have a really great interview with Gigi Edgley, which we'll be releasing this week from Farscape. It's just the one thing that makes a con great is your organization. And it's got to be better, and if it all means you can go back to the place that has made it great, go back there, because, it will make things a lot harder, and a lot of people who won't want to go back, and that's a shame. So. Or if
you can find another place that is bigger, that knows how to deal with a con, that's experienced in doing so, then do that.
Yeah,
exactly.
By all means. I mean, personally, though, I had a blast still, despite all that, but.
Yeah. All right, so we got about 60 seconds left, and we're going to close this out. Brendan, in 10 seconds or less, what beer would you recommend to our audience?
It's springtime. Go with a Belgian triple. If you're here in Dallas, look for Adelbert's Brewing. Their Belgian triple is fantastic. It's the best one I've ever had.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right. We will be back next week, and then we'll be off most of April due to Star Trek conventions and the Dallas Film Festival. But keep checking out our blogs and things that we're writing about and our reviews for movies on our website. We have a lot going on, including a lot of different music reviews for new albums that are coming out. So, especially for you Weezer fans out there, the White Album will be out next week, and we'll be having a review of that. We want to thank everybody for listening, and whether you agree or disagree with us about Batman versus Superman, we're still fans, but we're going to tell it to you straight about these movies. So, all right, everybody, we are out of here. Continue to be nerdy. Say goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Play more games.